Hey gorgeous souls, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another one of my videos today. So today's video is a podcast episode with the lovely Amber Romaniuk. So Amber and I talk all things hormones, and these are so important and something that is just not talked about enough, as you'll find out in the episode. Obviously I share a little bit about my hormone health and the struggles that I had, and in this episode we're going to share with you how to have happy hormones, which is everybody's ideal, right? But if you're new here to my channel, then welcome. My name is Emma. I'm an award-winning life coach, 2 times best-selling author, law of attraction YouTuber here on my channel, and I'm the host of the #1 spirituality podcast on iTunes, Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. And here on my channel I cover all things law of attraction, spirituality, self-help and manifestation. So not only do I really hope you're going to enjoy this video, but the abundance of videos here on my channel over the last 8 years. So I really hope you're going to enjoy Amber and I's conversation. And of course, if you want to watch any more incredible guest interviews like this from my podcast, you can find my playlist over on my YouTube channel, full of inspirational podcast episodes from the likes of Marie Forleo, Gabby Bernstein, Young Puello. The list goes on. You do not want to miss them, so make sure to go check out those as well. But without further ado, let's get started with Amber's episode. Please let me know how you find it, what your biggest takeaway is, and whether you have happy hormones and what you're going to try moving forwards. So thank you so much, gorgeous souls, for joining me for another one of my Spiritual Queens Badass Podcast episodes today. Today I am joined by the lovely Amber Romaniuk. And Amber, if you don't know, is an emotional eating and digestive and hormone expert who helps professional women achieve optimal health through mindful eating, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. Her podcast, the No Sugar Coating Podcast, has 1 million downloads. Welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me, Emma. I'm so excited to be with you today.
I'm so excited to talk all things hormones and health for you today, because this is I love talking about this. So I'm super excited to bring it to all our lovely listeners today. But before we dive into all of that goodness, one question I love to ask every guest who comes on the podcast is, when did you spiritually awaken? What's your story? And would you class yourself as spiritual?
Yeah, I would definitely. And my spiritual awakening happened as I went through a deep self-sabotaging experience with food in my body through binge eating, binging and purging, right? Just complete loss of control with food and dieting and hating my body. And so as I healed, I really started to wake up and connect with my intuition, my higher self, which was scary. And then I wanted to shut it all down with food again. And then I realized how intuitive and, being an empath and just being really sensitive were. And I was like, wow, I'm this soul that came to this planet to have this human experience and help assist all these other women. And it just, right? It just unfolded, I'd say from 25 onward. And then I'd say in the last couple of years, just awakening on an even deeper level to really the reason that I'm here. So it's been such a gift, really.
And it's interesting because so many people awaken or have these kind of big life truck moments in their life in so many different ways. And it's amazing to hear, I guess, the story, which isn't, it's a little bit different in terms of food has been the cause of that. And it's interesting how that's then led to your purpose and led to what you help people with now. And mine's very similar. Obviously, mine was very mental health focused, but the law of attraction found me. And now that's what I obviously teach. So it's interesting how our purpose can actually really find us through those really defining moments. And at the time you think, how on earth would that relate, or how on earth would I teach about that, or maybe you're not even thinking about that in the slightest. But it's interesting, I hear so many people tell me all different answers to that question, and it's really interesting how they awaken in such quite a unique way, and unique to them, of course, but actually it really weaves the path for their purpose, which I think is really interesting. So let's talk about the good stuff then. Let's talk about all your amazing work. So what is emotional eating, and how does this impact our mindset and frequency?
Yeah. So emotional eating to me is any reason for eating other than physical nourishment. And so physical nourishment are things like your stomach is growling, you get a hunger signal. And if you're not, that could be hormonally related. You haven't eaten for a few hours, but you know that it's time to nourish, and you're nourishing for your well-being, for energy, vitality, right? It can be enjoyment too, but it's different to enjoy a nourishing meal versus like I need to eat to numb.
Mm.
And emotional eating, some common triggers would be things like not knowing how to process negative emotions, overwhelm, fear, worry, anxiety, negative interactions with others, being an empath and taking on everyone else's stuff and then feeling like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and you don't know how to deal with it. Fatigue, can really fuel appetite levels. Hormone imbalances can fuel emotional eating. Mindless eating, eating while you're working. And the reason I call that emotional eating is because usually what's driving the need to not pause and take some time for yourself is unworthiness. I'm not good enough. I need to people please. I need to be perfect. I don't want anyone to be upset if I don't get this thing done. So I'm going to just throw myself under the bus and keep appeasing everyone else. And then that triggers more overwhelm and, all those kinds of things. So that's really what emotional eating is. And there's different levels of it, right? Because some people will have an emotional eating trigger come up and eat 3 pieces of chocolate. Some
Mm.
people will have emotional eating come up and eat a whole pint of ice cream. And then some will go full blown binge eating and completely lose control and eat until they're so full they're sick. Right. So there's this whole spectrum. And then food addiction to me is really around like the obsession and this deep, like you're always thinking about it, whether you're planning to control your diets and your macros and your meals and like obsessing about that, or you're completely obsessing and thinking about all the foods you're not allowing yourself to have. And then you go and lose control with them. And it's really just this complete loss of control. And the way that it impacts our frequency, I find, which keeps fueling the behavior, is obviously any kind of self-sabotage is we're in really low frequencies when we're in self-sabotaging behaviors. And so when we emotionally eat, number one, we're snuffing our intuition, we're hurting our body. So we're going to drop our frequency based off of potentially the low frequency foods that we're eating, the negative emotions associated with it, and then the way it's physically hurting our body and energetically hurting our energetic and spiritual body. And so I find after we emotionally eat, then there's inflammation, which is a great way to lower your frequency and suppress your dopamine levels, which is one of your mood boosting hormones. And then we feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel embarrassed after we do it, anger. And these are some of the most dense, low vibration emotions you can feel. And then once you're down there, I often find what happens for a lot of my clients is they're like, well, what's the point? I did it another day. I'm just going to do it again, because they're seeking that big pleasure, that dopamine hit, not realizing it's not going to raise their frequency. So I find then we kind of get stuck down there and it can feel like heavy and a bit overwhelming to get out of it. That being said, it's one of the most fulfilling journeys to go on to deal with it and raise yourself up, because once you do, like, life changes in so many miraculous ways.
It really does. And it's so true, because I think definitely along my healing journey, for a bit of back context, my hormones were the hugest part of that. And I was so focused on like this spiritual healing and like, meditation, past lives, all that great stuff. But then I wasn't realizing that actually like our bodies store trauma, and actually like my body was having a physical reaction to the stress, to the burnout, to the overwhelm, to the trauma that I was suppressing and the emotions I was suppressing. So I had body dysmorphia throughout my teenage years and young adult years. And then I feel like absolutely, even when you've just explained emotional eating, I'm like, oh my God, when I've had a stressful day, I'm like, cheesy pizza, cheese, carbs, give me everything. So I think we all do it, and mindlessly, so commonly, without even realizing that's what it is, even though we know we want those comforts when a day's been hard. But I think it really like came to my forefront of my awareness when I had high prolactin. So I had this huge hormonal problem for years. Couple of years ago, and I had cystic chronic acne all over my face, and the doctors were like, just go on the pill, the pill, the pill, the pill. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm over that. This is clearly not working. And nobody would even just do a blood test on me. So here in the UK under the NHS, I got misdiagnosed for years because they were just like, you just need to go on the pill. That's all. It's going to solve you every issue you have, Emma.
I hear you. And it's no different here. The pill is like the band-aid quick fix for everything that doesn't work. And the same with the testing. Like a lot, they just look at you and go, you don't need that. You're fine. Like you're too young to have hormone imbalances. And I'm like, I've seen women from 20 to 80 like have hormone imbalances. Like there's no age. Age doesn't mean anything with hormone issues, right?
No. And like we're never taught about these things either. And like
No,
I had no idea what hormones were being impacted or
no.
what on earth could be, impacting that. And it was only from working with a naturopathic doctor and learning about like menstrual cycles, hormones that I thought, okay, it could be PCOS. Obviously, I didn't have the blood work to confirm that. So I then went private and met an incredible
Mm,
gynecologist who instantly took one look at me and he was like, you should have been in my office 3 years ago. Like, this is serious. So he was
mhm.
amazing and he got so many tests for me done straight away, referred me back to the NHS so I didn't have to pay for all of this, which was amazing. And it turned out that I had dangerously high prolactin in their words. And from there, that gave me such a huge thing to work with having that diagnosis, but still they did nothing. They just said, oh,
Yeah,
just remove stress from your life. That's all you need, which yes,
yeah.
was the answer. But also, from the advice I'd got from the naturopathic doctor, I worked with supplements, I worked with different vitamins, I did seed cycling, I did all
Mhm.
these things. And if I hadn't done any of that and known none of this, I wouldn't be here now having healed it and have healthy prolactin levels. So when I
Yeah.
actually went back and had my blood test, I think it was 6 months later, they were like, what have you done here? You've actually got it to the balance level. What did you do? And I told them and they were like, good for you. And I was like, right, go tell people these
Yeah,
things.
tell people, right? But the system isn't really set up for us to succeed, right? There's a lot of things that, they want you on the pill, they want you on prescriptions, and it's unfortunate, but I'm so glad you had that experience because it's very similar for me. Like most people, they say, "Oh, you're fine, there's nothing wrong." Or then it's like they start doing the healing and then they go to their doctor and the doctor's like, "What have you been doing?" Just like your experience. And they're like, "Well, you wouldn't do this, so I went and saw someone else, and this is," it's like they're shocked that it's possible that you could heal or make the change, right? When like our bodies are always trying to heal, our bodies are miracles, but we just haven't been educated. And then we get in our own way with the self sabotage, with the burnout, the people pleasing, like all of these things that, we don't learn to heal just keep impacting our health on all five planes.
Yeah. And I've been learning recently, I'm doing Marie Forleo's Time Genius course, and she was talking about the impacts of stress. And I think it was like a crazy statistic of like 98% of illnesses are like because of stress. And I thought, this is wild. Like, I never
Yeah.
knew this. And it's, we live in such a stressful environment anyway nowadays, like with so much going on in the world. Like the last 3 years, I think we've all been on a traumatic ride together, which we get off. And it's no surprise that this affects our gut, our hormones, our happiness, stress levels, adrenals, like, and
Yes.
we're just never taught this stuff. And I feel like if there was more information, obviously podcasts like this, great, we're talking about these things, but
Yeah.
to the everyday person as well, like I feel like it would cause so much more happiness and healing for so many people. But I want to talk about the gut now because
Yeah.
I loved learning about the gut as well. And I had leaky gut, which I knew nothing about. That's another thing I discovered along my journey, which nobody ever even looked for.
Right.
So what are the connections between our gut health and hormones, and how does this impact us as women?
Oh my goodness, this is such a big one, and they essentially fuel each other. So if you've got gut issues, you've probably got hormone issues, and if you have hormone issues, you probably have gut issues. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be bloated. Gut issues, yes, bloating is a symptom of digestive issues, but so is acne issues, rosacea, psoriasis, right? So is brain fog, so is low energy, so is heightened PMS or irregular cycles, mood, imbalances. There's all kinds of different symptoms that can be tied to gut health issues. And so what I find, the key imbalances I see, number one, people don't chew their food thoroughly and they don't calm their nervous system down before they eat. And so then they're, swallowing their food into larger particles, and then it hits the stomach, and stress, medication, overeating, caffeine lower our stomach acid, and then we don't break our food down properly. So then we have malabsorption that happens in the small intestine where we're trying to absorb all of our nutrients. And then you can end up with the heartburn, the reflux, and all those kinds of things. And so your body's just in such a stress response trying to break down your food. And then we can shoot our cortisol through the roof, which is our stress hormone. And the leaky gut piece, right? When we're not chewing our food and digesting and breaking our fats and proteins down properly in our stomach, those bigger food particles are like banging against the intestinal lining and eventually make it permeable, and little holes are poked through. And then we have all these bits of foods and bacteria going into the bloodstream, which is not supposed to happen. And then our immune system is like, oh my gosh, this isn't supposed to be here. Brings in the whole immune system to clean it out, right? And then we get inflammation. And so what I find ends up happening, people are like chicken or egg. Well, it's hard to say which ones come first, but the more we have this leaky gut picture, the more of this bacteria and food spilling into the bloodstream, the more inflammation you have. The more puffy, the more brain fog, the more it impacts your mood, and the more it's going to impact your hormones. And the other big thing that I see is overwhelmed liver and then candida. So gut flora imbalance in the large intestine. It's got to be one of the biggest things I see because everyone has had to take antibiotics, I find, multiple times, even sometimes when they didn't need them. And then we're not taught how to properly rebalance our gut flora. And then you end up with gas, bloating, brain fog, and all kinds of symptoms. And so I'd say about 95% of my clients, including myself, had horrible candida upon trying to address the physical imbalances going on. And so what that did was it fueled my cortisol really high. So my cortisol was 2000 here in Canada. It's supposed to be about 350. So it was very extreme because of the binging, too much exercise, and then my digestive system was really bad. And I see that with a lot of my clients. So essentially, the more stressed the digestive system, the more it puts our body into a stress response, and then our cortisol levels usually go up. And that's the stress hormone. And I would say every single person I've ever worked with in the last 9 years have had elevated cortisol, or they're in a burnout where it's far too low. And I find once that happens and we've had inflammation for quite a while, I would say about 80% of my clients end up with underactive thyroid or hypothyroid, where the thyroid gets sluggish. The metabolism slows down. You're exhausted in the morning. You gain weight, but you can't lose it. You have cold hands and feet, hair loss, eyebrow thinning, your cycle's off. And then the last picture I see, as this stuff continues to unfold is, really low progesterone and estrogen, and women aren't getting their period regularly, or it's really irregular, and or their progesterone's, really low, but they end up with really high estrogen. And then their breasts are really tender weeks before their cycle. They get really warm and puffy. They're having night sweats. They're gaining weight, but they can't lose. And it's really impacting their mood. And of course, the more out of balance the physical body, the more it impacts our frequency, right? So then, people are frustrated because they aren't manifesting what they want, and life isn't unfolding the way they want. They don't feel like they can connect with their body and their intuition the way that they want to. So this is why it's so important to get to those root causes so that we can really balance the body and reconnect.
And it's so, so important. Like, I feel like from going on that health journey, from learning about all the things and taking different supplements, probiotics, everything, like, my friends and family thought I was mad, but I'm like, it worked though.
Yeah,
And like, exactly. I don't have bloating now. And, I'm that annoying friend now that whenever they have like hormone issues, I'm like, try this. Oh my God, you have to try this. And they're like, what are you recommending, Emma? But like, it's great that, so many people are talking about this more, and we are, connecting those dots, like you say, between stress, between the gut, between hormones, looking at actually not having a period isn't normal. And people are telling us that, but it's not normal. It's not healthy. No. And I think more and more people are coming off birth control. More and more people are opening their eyes to this, which is great. But obviously it's not great when you've suffered with serious health conditions for years. No. And then there was a simple fix, or there was a simple diagnosis, or there was other information available. So thank you for sharing all of that, because I think it's really going to help a lot of people connect some dots with maybe some symptoms that they've been having. So what are your top tips, Amber, for happy hormones?
My goodness. Okay. Number one, building out some kind of self-care ritual for yourself where you can actually regulate your nervous system, right? You can disconnect from technology. You can put on relaxing music, solfeggio frequencies, whatever it is to help calm you down. And then you can dive into your favorite practices or get to know what your favorite practices are, whether it's breath work, meditations, energy work of some kind. EFT tapping, I love because it calms cortisol really quickly. But self-care, Um, get your hormones tested so that you are aware of the numbers. And if your doctor refuses, get a second opinion. Keep advocating for yourself until you can get that support. And know that most doctors will read hormones and say, oh, everything's normal, you're fine. So if you're getting that told to you and you know everything's not normal, get another opinion, because I find the normal range is actually too big and we can have a lot going on in the normal range. Deal with emotional eating or binge eating if it's going on for you, because it is one of the top stressors for your body on all levels, especially your hormones. So heal your relationship with food, because while hormone testing is great and taking certain vitamins is great for it, if you're in deep self-sabotage, that stuff's not really going to work and you're not going to heal on the level that you are able to. So really deal with deep self-sabotage, deal with, an overbooked schedule, because these are the things that as you balance them out, you're going to make it a lot easier for yourself to balance your hormones, balancing out your caffeine consumption as well, I would say. So ideally, hopefully not drinking like 5 cups of coffee a day or relying on caffeine for energy, because if you are, there's probably some kind of a cortisol issue or something going on that's impacting you.
Mm. And I find as well, like when I went through the whole blood test and blood work side of things, they don't actually just generically test all of your hormones. They kind of test one, but not the other. So I had to be like, no, let's do the whole bunch. Let's see if anything's there. Because that's why, like, so many times it got missed, because they weren't testing for prolactin. They weren't testing for
Yeah,
testosterone. It was just
totally.
estrogen and progesterone. And I was like, great, but there's other hormones. Like, there's other
Yeah,
ones.
totally. I see that all the time. And that's why I was like, you know what? I'm done relying on them. And I just like figured out ways to source it myself, because you need all the answers and people want all the answers and they don't have to go back and forth to 10 times to get them. You know what I mean? So we've got to advocate for ourselves. I think that's one of the biggest things we need to learn how to do, is like keep asking and digging and getting what you need until you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find if you have the knowledge and you go in saying, I want a test for
Yes.
XYZ because I think it's this and I have these symptoms and I know that that contributes to that. I find like they're so much more open to it, because they're like, oh, how
Mhm.
do you know that? And I'm like, because I've done my research. I listened to
Yeah.
this podcast with Emma and Amber and now I know. So
Yeah,
definitely, I think
exactly.
knowledge is power with them. And like you say, advocating for yourself, explaining and, saying, look, I've got these symptoms, I think goes a long way with it, instead of just saying, oh, I think
Mhm.
I have a hormone imbalance. I think I've got something. There's no room for, you don't want any room for them to squirm out of it as such. But
Yeah.
what are some common causes for hormone and gut imbalances? What should we look out for?
Yeah, number one, emotional eating or binge eating, because of, again, the stress that goes on the body. Number two, antibiotic use really throws that gut flora off, like I was talking about before. It kills all the good and bad bacteria because it's clearing out infection, but then the bad bacteria in the large intestine takes over and just colonizes. And so if you have symptoms like brain fog, bloating, gas, low mood, lots of PMS symptoms, you're feeling like no matter what you try to do, food wise, you feel like you're getting more sensitive to more foods, probably the likelihood of having a candida overgrowth is pretty high. I think some other things are like, man, there's so many things I could go into. I feel like, can you ask the question again? Actually, just so
Cool.
I just had like a total like brain fog moment.
Cool. So I was saying, like, what are the common causes for hormone and
Yes.
gut imbalances? What should we look out for?
Yeah. So that candida that I was just talking about, that is a common cause for high cortisol. So that stress hormone is also adrenal fatigue is another name for it. Also, the candida can really fuel thyroid issues, because candida fuels inflammation. And inflammation looks like swelling, retention, puffiness, heat, pain, or redness. And so most of us have inflammation to some level. And the more inflammation we have, the more we stress the body out and we produce more cortisol as well. Um, so to me, like if there's gut stuff going on, those are precursors to what may be fueling some of your hormone imbalances. And then I find with causes for hormone imbalances, again, emotional eating, too high of caffeine consumption. I really find there's this emotional component of unworthiness and not feeling good enough. So the proving, the people pleasing, overbooking your schedule, perfection, nothing ever being good enough, body image issues, that's a huge one. Because if you're fighting with your body and you're in self-sabotage, whether it's diets, restriction, starvation, over exercising, and using those things to punish yourself, or you're punishing yourself with overconsumption of food, that is a massive stressor for both gut and hormone imbalances. So dealing with body image issues, learning how to build your worthiness is so important, and stopping the fight with your body because she unconditionally loves you. The overbooked schedule just burns out the nervous system, and it really depletes not only our cortisol levels, but the more our nervous system is overwhelmed, then it depletes our B vitamins, and your B12, which is your energy vitamin, gets really depleted, and your vitamin D and your iron and your ferritin and your magnesium, like your precious minerals, they all get depleted as well. So this is why it's important to understand that it's not only these things are fueling gut and hormone issues, but it's also depleting other really vital nutrients in your body that can contribute to more fatigue, more brain fog, more mood issues, more low energy. So I would say that those are some of the top things that I see. The biggest number one cause, though, is the negative ego voice in the head that's governing you and continuing to tell you you're not good enough and you need to push harder, try harder, look better. Because your thoughts, as you know, your thoughts and beliefs are dictating the way you behave and show up in the world and the way you are or aren't taking care of yourself.
And they create your reality too.
Yes, they do.
So yeah, there's lots to take away here and lots to digest and lots to work with, which I think is amazing. But my last question to you today then, Amber, is what is one piece of life advice you'd like to leave my lovely listeners with?
Oh my goodness. Be more gentle with yourself if you are going through any of this. Try to have compassion for your body. She's really doing the best she can with what she's been given, and she's not out to get you. She unconditionally loves you. She is a teacher, and she wants to take you on this healing journey and teach you about your hormones, your gut issues, your self sabotage, your negative thoughts, so that you can come home to who you really are in your natural state, which is this beautiful soul living in this body, being in love with herself and living her best life. And that's really what this journey is meant to unfold to.
I love that. That's lovely. And it's so true. And I think with all healing work, it is that coming home to yourself, knowing yourself,
Yeah.
finding peace with yourself. So I think the body is something that's so commonly missed out of healing because we
Mm-hmm.
just think, well, it's emotional, it's psychological. And yes, that's true. And sometimes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual too. But I feel like going along my healing journey, I always used to just focus on that spiritual and then focus on the cognitive. And it was only when I really, really focused on the body and looked at, trauma trapped in the body, the hormones and everything we've spoken about, that I really saw the huge results because I was
Mm-hmm.
working with all three. I wasn't just working with the one and hoping that that was going to work and,
Yeah.
ignoring the others as such. So I think it's such such an important part of the healing process. So that's why I was so excited to have this conversation today because I know it's going to resonate with so many people. But Amber, where can everyone find you if they want to learn more about your work?
Yeah, totally. So my website is amberprove.ca. I have a free emotional eating quiz there. And if anyone wants to connect and talk about any of these things and explore the path, I offer a body freedom consultation. I also have my podcast, which I'm so excited to have you on. It's the No Sugarcoating Podcast, available on all apps. And then, of course, my website. And then I'm on Instagram, and my handle is my name at Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk.
Amazing. And I will, of course, put a clickable link to Amber's website and Instagram in the description below. So you have a nice, easy, clickable link to go and check her out. But thank you so much, Amber. It's been so much fun talking all things hormones. We're going to go and create happy hormones now. So thank you
Yes,
so much for sharing your pearls of wisdom with us today.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Amber. Please do let me know how you found it and what your biggest takeaway was in the comments below. But thank you so much, gorgeous souls, for watching. I appreciate all your views and likes. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here because we'd love to see you again soon. Don't forget to leave me a comment in the comments box down below because I replied to them all, and I will see you all in my next video, which will be on Friday. Lots of love.